Hi, Wendy with Murdock Escorted Tours. We are so grateful that you are here with us for a few minutes today. We are excited to share one of our wonderful tours that we have going to Europe this fall. And we've got with us Michael Phillips, who is going to be your personal host and guide on this tour. Michael has been doing tours with us for many years, and we just love getting to work with him and everything that he brings to the tour. So welcome, Michael. Can you give us a little bit of background on you and and what you've done in the past? Maybe let's talk about you as a tour director.
Great. Well, thanks, Wendy. You know how much I love doing this, and this is an exciting tour we're talking about for this fall. So I've led tours for, boy, it's probably 20 years now, starting back my days as a BYU professor and then moving forward after that. Uh, an area that I have concentrated on most recently has been Europe. And so just over the past, boy, just 2 years, in 2022, we did a big tour that included Oberammergau and the Passion Play. We traveled in Germany and Austria and Switzerland. We hit some Italy. It was a wonderful
Yeah.
tour. And just this last year, we did a tour to Italy again, but hitting all of the highlights in some of my favorite cities, including Rome and Florence and Venice and some of the wonderful cities in between. And
And
then just this
those,
past, yeah,
yeah,
then past
huge
November and
successes.
yeah, and just this past November and December, we went and had a marvelous time at the German Christmas markets and did some wonderful kind of history and culture, and then spent time out in the wonderful Christmas markets. And then it had been about, I think, 15 years since I'd done Spain and Portugal. And a few of my travelers said, we've done a lot of kind of Central Europe. We'd like to go another direction. Where's somewhere that maybe we haven't gone? And as we talked, turned out a lot of them had not really spent any time in Spain and Portugal. So that's how we kind of
Well,
put the trip together.
yeah, no, I was going to say when you brought this tour to us last year and said, I'm really thinking about this tour, I'm like, why do I keep hearing about Portugal? What is it that everybody's talking about Portugal? Spain's always been a great place to visit and very popular. Love Barcelona, love all the places. But Portugal, it's just there's been so much focus on actually both of these countries. So what is it about these two countries and about the tour that you put together? And then let's take a look at the tour and you can walk us through it.
Okay. So I think that the high level question is an interesting one. These are places that people think about Central Europe and they maybe don't think about this huge peninsula and these two wonderful countries. But if you start looking at their history and having just been in uh, Italy a couple of times, kind of the power of Europe moves from Italy to Spain,
Isn't
and
that
Spain
interesting?
and Portugal become the colonial powers, right?
Yeah,
So
yeah.
here you've got these little countries. So you've got Spain that has about 48 million people in it. But guess how many people in the world speak Spanish as their native language? 500 million. Portugal, a much smaller country, even that has, let's see, I was making some notes about this. It's only got about 10 million people, but worldwide there are 250 million native Portuguese speakers. So
That's
the
incredible.
power of, at the height of their power as colonial powers, and certainly here in the Americas, all of Latin America, right? And a
Yeah.
wonderful kind of history of how the Pope intervened to split up South America between Spain and Portugal. And that's why we end up with Portuguese speaking Brazil and then all the other Spanish speaking countries. So the power and influence of these countries is hard to kind of,
Ignore.
but yeah, and to ignore worldwide. They're
No.
just wonderful places. Then I'd say the other piece is it's kind of this peninsula that's full of kind of sun and fun and history and culture and art. Uh, I think people are surprised a little bit when they get there because you'll see reminiscence, things that are very reminiscent of France. See things that feel very Italian, but then there's kind of its own flavor and color and all.
It's just, yeah, a great Mod Podge of all of that. And everybody who goes there just says that it has become so dear to their heart. and
Yeah.
that one of their favorite places. I think so many people have done the big countries, like you say, Italy and Germany and Europe and the
France and the
UK and those
UK and
areas. And so this is something different, and it is a taste of so many different cultures. So let's take a look at your tour. One of the things I love that you do is you can always put so much history, art, and just the culture of all of it together and make it even. I say I'm not a huge art person, but it takes people like you to really point out the significance. And then I really fall in love with a particular style or a feel. And I love how you can make that come alive for somebody like myself.
well, and for those who don't know me, my background is my PhD is in cultural history from the University of Chicago. And as a college professor, I taught, Western Civ. We went through the history of art and culture in the Western world, and certainly Spain and Portugal were a big piece of that. And then I wrote my doctoral dissertation in Central America. So I do speak fluent Spanish. I don't speak Portuguese, but have traveled extensively in both of these countries. And so I always feel like part of my job as a host on these tours is to introduce people to something new. I feel like I'm the person who is matchmaking. I'm going to take you on a speed date in Portugal and be the
Yeah.
matchmaker, and I hope
Well,
you'll fall in
let's
love the way that I do. So I was shall we go? Shall we go and see
yeah,
them?
yeah, I'm
Let's
I'm
see where we're
dying. I'm
going.
dying to hear you walk through this trip.
Okay, so we're going to be in what's known as the Iberian Peninsula. These names, Iberia, or in kind of Greek Roman times, Hesperia. We think that's even where the name España came from. But if you overlay this over the rest of Europe, I mean, we're going into an area that is huge geographically. You see how much bigger
Look
Spain
at
is than
that.
Portugal, but these are huge countries, and we can't cover all of them, so we've made some choices. And you'll see down there at the tip of Gibraltar where we will go that you're touching Africa. I mean, and the influence, of course, of the Moors is going to be a fascinating thing for us to look at. But we'll start, as we should, in the city of Madrid, the capital of Spain. And if you didn't know where you were, you might think you were in Paris on some of the streets.
Look at that.
It was a power, and this is where the power was, of course, localized in Madrid. And we'll see some wonderful things like the Royal Palace, which, of course, was influenced very much by Versailles. And when you get inside, you'll think you are in
Yeah.
a wonderful French palace, but you'll see work by great Italian artists who were brought in to work there as well. So we'll start in Madrid. We'll do some of the wonderful sights around the city, and the city has these wonderful squares. And these squares are really the home of evening nightlife and, of course, outdoor cafes. And we'll go to the Puerto del Sol, a wonderful, um, just it is so beautiful. And the fact that we're going to be there in September, September is really wonderful because the highs are kind of in the 60s, the highs are in the 70s, the lows are in the 60s. It stays very constant. And it's just the perfect time
Basically
to travel.
perfect.
It is. It's just perfect weather for travel. Um, Anyone who travels with me knows that we got a lot of food issues we got to deal with. And one of them is eating hot, freshly made churros with chocolate sauce.
Oh,
We'll
that
see
looks amazing.
throughout Spain, and they aren't these rewarmed ones like you get at Costco. These they'll be pouring the batter right into the hot oil, giving you your little dish of chocolate. It'll be you'll just fall
I'm
in love.
glad you get individual ones so you can drink it when you're done.
That's right. You can just drink that thing like the thickest hot chocolate you've ever had in your life. We will hit some museums. As you've said, Wendy, I do like people to see some of the art, and I think probably the greatest portrait museum in the world is the Prado. We will see some of the most amazing portraiture there. Fantastic museum. And then we'll go to a little side museum and see perhaps the most important work of art of the 20th century, which is the Guernica by Pablo Picasso. And
Wow.
it's a statement about the carpet bombing that took place in the little town of Guernica during the Spanish Civil War. And this work of art is huge. What you're looking at right here is probably 30 feet wide and maybe 10 feet tall. And its home was the Museum of Modern Art in New York for many, many, many years because Picasso said it cannot be displayed in Spain as long as Francisco Franco is alive and the country is not a democracy. Once it's a democracy, I want it to go back. Well, let me tell you, the country became a democracy, but MoMA did not want to let go of
Did
this
not want to let it go.
it was their masterpiece. It was a little bit of a battle, but we will go and see this incredible work of art. And I can tell you lots more about the history of the Spanish Civil War and the images that are there that are really, really spectacular.
Wow.
Um, as we leave Madrid, we're going to go up to one of the most interesting places I think I've ever been. It is a massive cathedral carved into the side of a stone mountain. It's known as the Valley of the Fallen. It is where Franco himself is buried. So it evokes a lot of kind of emotion and political feelings, but it's one of the largest cathedrals in the world. And it's just an amazing place to go see. So we will see that, talk a little bit more about the fall of Franco, um, and then the rise again of a Spanish king, but a Spanish king who was very enlightened and became just a constitutional monarch and brought democracy to the country. So very interesting place.
Wow, so cool.
There are these wonderful monasteries and palaces that we'll see. One of my favorite is El Escorial. We'll see that on our way out of Madrid as well. And one of the other things, I didn't put any slides in, but I got thinking about this morning. One of the other things you see throughout Spain, and there's a couple of examples near El Escorial, are maybe the best preserved Roman aqueducts anywhere in all of Europe. And they're spectacular and beautiful. And we'll take the coach through them probably as we leave some of these areas.
Just one of those things people would never think of.
Yeah, I mean, the breadth and stretch of the Roman Empire all through Iberia, all through the UK. I mean, just an amazing thing. Here, when you start thinking of Spain, a lot of people think about maybe the musical Camelot. And of course, Segovia is the image you get of these wonderful
Look at
types of
that. Wow.
castles. So we'll go to Segovia and see this marvelous castle in the background. You see the city itself, the wonderful churches that are there. But I think this castle to me is one of the most like prototypical, marvelous castle images. It's almost Disney-esque, but it's the
I
real
was
deal.
gonna say it looks so much like Neuschwanstein.
Very similar, but the thing
Yeah.
people have to remember about Neuschwanstein is remember Mad King Ludwig was building in a style that was about 200 years previous to the time he was building it. This actually dates from the right period, right? It's not a later reproduction like what Ludwig was doing
Wow.
with his with his castles and palaces. We'll see wonderful cathedral there as well. Things that people might not even expect to see in Spain and Portugal. And like I say, the blue skies are no mistake here. This is what we will expect in September. Just a sunny and wonderful kind of time. We'll get into some of these smaller areas that have these fantastic side streets and see the wonderful handicrafts that are associated with Spain. Lots of basketry, lots of ceramic work, just delightful and wonderful things. I have to read you this quote that I picked up from Anthony Bourdain, who, he was a foodie, but
Right.
he said this about Spain. Any reasonable, sentient person who looks at Spain, comes to Spain, eats in Spain, drinks in Spain, they're going to fall in love. Otherwise, there's something deeply wrong with you. This is the dream of all the world, he says. That's what he said about Spain.
That
Uh,
that is a perfect Bourdain quote too.
and that's the way he felt about it. We'll see a wonderful university town, Salamanca, as we work our way over towards Portugal. And it is spectacularly wonderful. Take a look at that town square
Wow.
at
That
night.
that really reminds me of Venice, the St. Mark's Square in Venice.
It has a little of that feel, doesn't it? But it's
Yeah.
more flooded and there aren't quite as many pigeons. So yeah, it's similar in a
Quite
lot.
as many birds.
We'll stop and have lunch in this wonderful place called Ciudad Rodrigo. It kind of sits up high, and we'll be able to look into Spain and into Portugal. And that's part of the reason I've chosen this as a wonderful. It's called a parador, a place to stop and rest, and we'll have this wonderful view. Then we'll pass over into Portugal, but we'll come into Portugal in the north, and we'll work our way south. And we'll go to this wonderful city of Coimbra, perhaps not as well known as, say, Lisbon, but it is the home of a wonderful university. It's got fantastic architecture, and we will have the chance to go into this library that is frozen in time 500 years ago. One of the most beautiful libraries I've ever been in my life. And so this
Wow.
is at the University of Coimbra. And not only is the library beautiful, the collection that is there dates back 400 and 500 years, these wonderful books, many of which are probably hand copied by monks and things. So really a fantastic kind of temple of learning. We'll see that. As we work our way kind of out of Coimbra, we're going to work our way down through Portugal, and we'll hit some wonderful cities: Nazaré, Batala, Fatima, Obidos, and each one of these has wonderful things associated with it. Fatima is one of the major Catholic pilgrimage sites. As we get 5 and 10 miles away from Fatima, we'll see people crawling on the side of the road because their vow was to make the pilgrimage on hand and knee. But we'll see some really remarkable um, kind of faith and things played out here in wonderful Fatima. The city of Obidos, one of the great walled cities of Europe that has been preserved. And you see these wonderful battlements kind of on all the walls surrounding this wonderful old city. Obidos enchants people because it's such a wonderful place. Take a look at these
Oh,
castles that sit along the walls,
I was
right?
gonna say that that is just an ideal castle. That is like exactly what you picture them to look like. It just is missing a moat.
Yeah, and those wonderful crenellations or battlements, you can almost envision, you know, people
The
with bow
people
and
up.
arrow reaching out to shoot. And so we'll get to see a wonderful feel for that. We'll travel through all of those places as we work our way down to Lisbon. And Lisbon may be a city that people don't know as well as, say, a Madrid or what have you, but it's a coastal city just covered with wonderfully colored buildings. It is one of the most cheerful, cheery places that I've ever been in. Of course, it was the center of the world of exploration for many, many decades, if not centuries. Has these wonderful little hilly streets with streetcars on them going up and down. So the exploring in Lisbon is wonderful fun. It's just kind of an amazing place. And as I've said, it is a coastal city. So we're going to see these wonderful little fortresses built out into the ocean. And these were places that helped protect the fleets and the shipping. They also, some of them were where the taxes had to be paid for those who were coming in and out. And that's, of course, why this city became rich and important, is because of the shipping
As
that took place there. Take a look at the Peña Palace. I mean, talk about a place with wonderful colors that sits up on a high on a hill, kind of a little outside the city. We'll head up there.
See
Um,
that that is like quintessential Spanish, that what you would expect, what I would expect to see in Spain and Portugal is
yep.
buildings like this, just so full of color.
The bright colors, you can see how that influence makes its way over into Latin America, whether it's
Yeah.
Brazil or in the Spanish-speaking countries. I think it's quite wonderful. And they're wonderful cliffs as well as we travel along, and lighthouses, all the things you would associate kind of with a wonderful coastal area. Again, we'll see some wonderful palaces. We see these crenellations, the crenellated towers. It's just such a wonderful mix. But the other thing that we'll see is a really burgeoning art scene with a lot of modern artists doing work that sits in so nicely with us. So we'll see a mix of old architecture and new architecture, kind of the traditional art and then the wonderful new art. I love there's a kind of a famous author, Mary McCarthy. She says this about Portugal as a whole. She says, any Portuguese town looks like a bride's finery. She says, it has something old, something new, something borrowed, and something blue. And that's what we'll find in each one
That's
of these
fun.
little towns. But one special event that we'll have when we're in Lisbon is we will spend an evening having dinner and hearing a performance of Fado, spelled Fado. Fado is probably the best way to describe it. It is the Portuguese blues. And
Oh,
there's a little setup. There's a male singer, there's a female singer. They sing together. And in many of these Fado restaurants that are kind of local, the audience will sing along at certain times too, because they know these Fado songs, but they are so filled with heart and with soul.
And the passion. Yeah.
Amalia Rodriguez said this about Fado. The only thing that matters is to feel the Fado. The Fado is not meant to be sung, it simply happens. You feel it, you don't understand it, and you don't explain it. And that has been my experience every time I've gone to Fado. With my Spanish, I get enough of the Portuguese to kind of know what's being sung. But this will be one of our wonderful evenings when we go to an actual Fado performance in
I was going
Lisbon.
to say, this looks so much more enjoyable than a flamenco show. And nothing against the flamenco show, but I think our friend Brad Wilcox probably said it the best. He said it's a temper tantrum on stage, is basically.
And I will tell you, I love it, and we will go to one. But
Well,
this will
good.
have
You have a wonderful comparison because I was so happy I had that experience. I don't know that I'd do it again, but I'm
heart.
so glad I had the experience.
You'll get the heart and soul here, and then you'll hear the pounding in the other. We'll leave Lisbon going across this marvelous bridge. I'll have a lot more to say about that. This statue of Christ as well. And then, of course, we'll make our way across, and we'll see Sevilla and the impact of the Moors and of Africa in the area. So we'll have a chance there. We will see
There it
flamenco.
is.
Uh, Flamenco is wonderful, and I like the idea of a temper tantrum on stage, but man, it's the most beautiful temper tantrum you've ever seen.
It
Uh,
really is passionate.
it
That's
is.
the word. It's passionate.
We'll see the famous white city of Gracelema. It just sits there in the mountains. It's so beautiful. Everything with the white stucco. Look at the way it sits there. It's known as the White Village, sitting up against kind of the natural stone formations that are
It's
then
beautiful.
topped with some castle areas. So there's some other pictures of Grasalema. Um, we will take a chance and see something unique. We will go to the Pileta Caves and see some cave art that dates back tens of thousands of years. And this is really spectacular. It's one of my kind of life experiences when I have a chance to go and see kind of prehistoric drawings and art on these cave walls. And this one is not terribly well known. It's not heavily visited, so it'll be a real chance for us to go and do something fairly unique. So we've made arrangements to do that. We
Nice.
will then do something very unique. We will pass out of Spain into jolly old England, and we will go to the Rock of Gibraltar, which is of course, still owned by the UK. When we get there, you enter by driving across a runway, and you leave Spain, you drive across the runway, and you go from driving on the right side of the road. Once you cross the runway, you drive on the left side of the road because you're then in England. And we will have some fish and chips, have a good old time there. Kind of a unique and wonderful experience.
Didn't know you were going to hit the UK as well on this
Yeah,
trip.
didn't know you'd get that little piece of it, and then you can gaze across and see Africa. So it's kind of a unique and wonderful moment. And I have lots more to say about wonderful Gibraltar. As we work our way
Alhambra.
back up, we'll come to the Alhambra, one of the great kind of castle fortresses in all of the world, not just in Spain. And then as we leave the Alhambra, we will come up through what's known as La Mancha, and of course, famous from Don Quixote de La Mancha. La Mancha is this whole area that's very barren. There are windmills that are there that serve both lots of different purposes, but including bringing water up out of wells. It's beautiful and barren, and we will read some Don Quixote as we pass these wonderful
Well, how
windmills,
could you not?
of course. And then we'll make our way to the wonderful, of course, city of Granada. Granada is a place that people do indeed lose their hearts, and Granada stays with them forever. And while we're there, we'll see some wonderful art. We'll see some of the works of El Greco. And it's a city where just roaming the little old streets will be fantastic. After we're done, we will board our flights. I don't think we'll be on Iberia Air, but I like the name of the airline. We'll be saying adios to Iberia, and we'll be making our way back. Just a couple other thoughts about things related to the trip. I had mentioned the beauty and wonderfulness of um, eating churros. Also, this is an area because of where it sits that will have wonderful seafood. It's famous for its cured meats, especially its Iberian cured ham. We'll see some wonderful stores where there'll be hundreds of hams hanging from the ceiling. We'll have some paella, a wonderful rice dish that's very yellow because it's seasoned with saffron, one of the world's most
Oh,
expensive but wonderful spices. We'll have a chance somewhere along the way to have gazpacho, which is a cold tomato soup. People don't know much about gazpacho, but I was intrigued. I think it was last year that Marjorie Taylor Greene in the House of Representatives gave a very impassioned speech that they had to get rid of the Nazi gazpacho that was running around. She, of course, meant Gestapo, but she called them the gazpacho. It was a marvelously humorous moment, but maybe the best publicity
whoops.
gazpacho has had in a while. We'll have tortillas, but not the kind you think of in Latin America. A tortilla in Spain is a Spanish omelet, usually with some potato, egg.
Oh,
It's delicious. So that's a true tortilla, is something with egg. Wonderful souvenirs throughout this area. Of course, people know Yadro. They have wonderful kind of knives and swords. They do a lot of work with metal. Obviously, there's some other things, olive oil, the pearls that come from the island of Majorca, the flamenco shawls, the
oh,
beautiful, embroidered shawls with bright color, usually on a black background. Filigree work in metal, kind of beautiful. Lots of things made of cork. And then one of my favorites in Portugal, there are all sorts of ceramic things with roosters. Roosters are kind of the thing in all over Portugal. So we'll see all sorts of wonderful rooster images. It's kind of an image for the country. But these are incredible, wonderful countries. They were the world's power for a time. And that is not all that long ago. If you think about the fact that the last of the colonies of Portugal was Macau, and it was only handed over to China in 1999, just 25 years ago. That was kind of
wow.
the end of Portuguese power as a colonizer. So it's just going to be an amazing thing to see. There's so much for us to dig into historically, but mostly it's just such a beautiful um, kind of, I think we were careful when we named the tour that it was about art, culture, and history. That's what we're going to get when we.
Exactly. The thing that I love about the tour that you've put together, Michael, is that you are going to visit these two countries and you are going to see everything there is to see. It is a little bit of a longer tour, but it is because it is so inclusive and it is so covering. And I love that you've crafted just such a unique experience that people will be able to go home and say that they really felt what it was like to explore these two countries and not that they had to choose, like they had to say, well, you know what, maybe I'll go back and do this one some other time. And we say that, and usually we don't get to go back, and
Right.
you're covering it and it's going to be there. And um, I just love what you've done, and the tour just looks amazing, and I'm just thrilled, and I know that you're going to make it just that much more special for them on top of all of those amazing places, because everybody who goes with you on one of your adventures comes back and signs up for your next adventure and your next adventure. So I know how fun you are, and they obviously know or will get to know you and enjoy it that much as well. So
So
thank
come
you.
come join our travel family.
Yeah.
We would love to adopt you into the clan. I'll tell you what, the other thing, I've thought two things about this trip. It moves a little faster than some of the tours I design. I like staying places 2 and 3 nights, but there was so much I wanted to do that will move a tiny bit faster. But I know it's when school's in session, but this would be a great trip for families. Pull them out
Oh,
of school for a week or two, and I'll teach them more, I promise, during that time than they would ever miss. So
that
bring families along. We'd love to have them.
do it. Absolutely. Well, thank you so much again for your time for this presentation and for this tour. And we hope that you will take a look at the details and consider joining us this year. Again, Spain and Portugal, hot It is something everybody is talking about. You're going to be right in trend with this tour, and just do yourself a favor and put it on your bucket list and do it. So thank you again so much. Thank you, Michael. And we just hope you have a really great day. Thank you for sharing this time with us.
Thanks, everybody. Thanks, Wendy.